All right, what's happening? It says I'm live on my end. Did it change reality on your end?
I'm not seeing it here. Let me nope, I am.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we're
that means we're
good.
good to go. All right. So I'm curious. Sunday, do you church on Sundays?
Yeah,
Okay.
every other Sunday. So and we call it wisdom school.
Okay.
Um so I teach it and I lead it, but
Mm,
we've been doing it for so long now, 7, 8 months, that people have been approaching me saying, "Hey, can I lead it next
mm,
Sunday?" Which is phenomenal. Which is it's exactly what I want.
okay.
Um,
Does that make you a pastor, or do you have a title?
no, I don't have a title. Even though I think pastor would be appropriate. I mean, I think everybody who leads it would be a pastor. Um,
So no one calls you Pastor Lamont at this point.
no,
Okay.
nobody calls me Pastor Lamont at this point. No, some of the people on my uh, the Mr. Biscuit Speaks channel have called me Professor because
Okay.
of the way I talk. It's just a nickname. But no, I think that what a what the church was supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and what it's unfortunately not been recently, at least in my experience. And you tell me about your experience too. But for me, church has kind of been this: you get there, you listen to a heralding, you sing some
Mm-hmm.
music, and you leave. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that it was envisioned, and I wrote this wherever it's in the Bible, I circled it, wherever Paul
Mm-hmm.
says one another. So it says,
Mm-hmm.
break bread with one another, promote to
Forgive
good
one
works one another,
another.
forgive one another, pray
All the
for
one
one
another.
another,
Yeah.
all of these one another's. And I'm like, why isn't this happening in like the
Mm-hmm.
modern church? It's like in the modern church, you walk in, there's hardly any one another's. I mean, you may get 10 minutes of fellowship, talking with people. So I'm like, look, I want to create an area where people can genuinely dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
where people can really talk to each other, and where it isn't just about me, where I'm not only a teacher, but I'm also a student. Dialogue
Mm-hmm.
is extremely important for growth. And so I was just like, look, my wife finally just said, hey, do it, set it up, like
Hmm.
make it, create this thing. And
Okay.
we're like 15 people deep on average. Some people
Mm-hmm.
from my YouTube channel have actually driven down to
Wow.
be a part of it. And we talk about really like relevant issues like lies. Should lies be a general purpose tool? Should it be a special purpose tool? Are there times where you should and times where you shouldn't? We'll talk about the flow state. So it's been
Okay.
phenomenal.
And why only every other? Are you at like a traditional church on the other Sundays or no church then?
No, that Sunday I usually just spend with family, just because I
Okay.
spend so much time doing work.
Mm-hmm.
That Sunday is just kind of a family day where me and my wife. And now this day is an exception.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's cousin's in town, so she's going to pick her up. My daughter is with her grandma. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it becomes an every Sunday thing, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people from wisdom school are kind of taking it up and saying, hey, they want to be in leadership, and they would say, hey, I want to take a hold of this thing, I have something to teach. So we
Mm-hmm.
have we have Mormons who left the Mormon faith,
Mm-hmm.
and uh I brought some of them aside. It's like, hey, telling your story about how you were able to leave, because
Mm-hmm.
that cultural component, it's very difficult to depart from. It's one of the reasons I was interested in talking with you,
Mm-hmm.
because even though I'm still a part of the tradition that you left, I think that it is a powerful thing to be able to say, hey, I shifted my entire tradition. I
Mm-hmm.
shifted that, and dealt with whatever consequences came with that. I think you have something
Right.
to teach for that reason. So
That's
anyway.
interesting. When I was a Christian, I think I said this on Ichapod before, but I used to always think when I was going to church, like getting the family up and out and to church every Sunday, the one of the days of the week that you're supposed to be resting, but having to do that every Sunday when you've got kids and all that, it just seems so stressful that I always thought, why aren't more families like doing this more on an every other week kind of a basis? And I said, thinking ahead, if I got married as a Christian man and had a family, that we wouldn't do this every week. It just seemed like too taxing with everything else going on throughout the week
Right,
to
right,
try to
yeah.
do that again on a Sunday. Um,
And
So I can appreciate that at least.
yeah, and like how often do you actually get a tool from church,
Mm,
like a tool that you can actually leave church and use and say, wow, now I actually have a life applicable tool, right? So
mm,
at Wisdom School, we call it the ecology of practices. So if anybody wants to teach Wisdom School, we have like a little packet that just is like the guidelines. Like, we don't want you to monologue,
mhm,
include everybody in the group. All the voices are important. It's pretty simple. But one of the things that we want to always happen when someone teaches is for after the teaching happens, give us a practice, give us
mm.
some ways that we can practice this in our
Right,
personal lives, so that we don't just leave with propositional knowledge, but that
right.
we can actually take home some life applicable,
Yeah.
participatory forms of knowing. So
Well,
yeah.
you know me, I'm always trying to be fair to the tradition that I left. And I think depending on the kind of church that you were at, someone could say, well, no, we do that at, I mean, I've seen very many churches that do that. They would say, we do the one another's. You see those one another's in scripture, at least while
Right.
we're
Yeah. Yeah.
here. Scripture says, what is it? Speak to one another with spiritual songs and hymns. So we're making sure that the songs that we sing, they have the kind of, spiritual qualities that when we're singing them to each other, it's like we're preaching to one another.
Right.
And then all the rest of the one another's, like, it's not if we don't do them in this 2-hour window on Sunday that we don't do them. No, we're getting instructions during this 2-hour window on Sunday on how to better do them throughout the week when we quote unquote do life with one another. And
Yeah.
at the end of my book, Let There Be Gaslight, one of the things that I said was, matter of fact, I don't think he watches the podcast. One of my friends in Atlanta, he's a rapper in Atlanta, kind of conscious, but we knew each other from the Christian world. He read my book, and at the end, in the epilogue, I say, during the Enlightenment in France, after their revolution, they converted their churches to temples of reason. So they didn't stop using the church buildings. They didn't stop coming together. They said, okay, when we come together now, we're going to reason and not have somebody try to give us dogma. And so I said in the epilogue of my book, it's not that we are not going to need pastors and imams in churches. We still are going to need them, but maybe they're going to change. And I wasn't speaking to, I don't think I was speaking to my generation. Matter of fact, it's funny, just before you hit me up saying, hey, let's get on, one of my friends on Facebook, he has a page called the Trump Land Diaries, where he just chronicles all of Trump's nonsense from all. He used to work at Mar-a-Lago back in the early 2000s. So he's got
Wow.
inside scoop, and he's been chronicling. So he's still chronicling. And he says I helped him blow up his page. He went from 43 followers to 22,000 followers. And I can't do that for myself, but I did
Wow.
it for him. But I said to him, a lot of my ideas, friends have told me, said, Brady, your ideas, they're going to be recognized and praised posthumously. Like, once you die, people are going to get into your creativity. Say, oh, this guy said this. And I said, I don't mind being that kind of person where I'll put out an idea today,
Mm-hmm.
and it won't percolate in my generation, but maybe when I'm gone, somebody will take it and run with it. And somebody might take my ideas and become a millionaire off of them. But I said all that to say, in the epilogue of the book, I was saying, it may not be in my generation that the church stops playing its present role, but I think in years to come, once people realize that this really is not something that we can advance off of, we can understand things about the past, but I don't know if we can advance off of this. The church might change its function. And then one of my guys in Atlanta hit me up and said, hey, do you still think that? Because that was before I spent 2 years bad mouthing religion on Facebook.
Yeah.
So he hit me up like, yo, do you still think that the church is going to play that kind of role, and that pastors and imams and these religious institutions are still necessary? And I had to think about that. But hearing you say what you're saying about Wisdom School, it's like, no, that kind of is what I had in mind. I'm curious for you, when you all do Wisdom School, how central is the Bible to what you're doing every other week?
I mean, it tends to take a central role whenever I speak, but I'm not the only one speaking. So we have atheists there. As a matter of fact, I go to the secular club, which sometimes utilizes the same room in the Hilliard Library that we visit. So last time they had booked our room at the Hilliard Library, but they didn't have the secular group's room. And I saw them. I was like, hey, you guys want to just like come in with us and we'll just make this one big thing.
Hmm.
They had their own agenda that day. They had their own topics they want to talk about. So they had to like use a table, like, in the library, which isn't as good as like when you book one of the rooms. Yeah, so I will tend to draw from that wisdom tradition most often. But other people don't. So there's somebody who's in school for psychology, so they'll reach for that. There's somebody, a guy named Steven. I love this guy. He will just always remind us to hold all of our ideas lightly. So it's legit. Whenever Steven is there, like no matter what the whole group says, he will just end with he's really quiet, really patient, doesn't really speak up a lot. But when he does, it's very, very insightful. And he's always reminding the group, hey guys, I know we seem to be on track. We seem to be finding something. There seems to be like this cool kind of energy here. But remember to hold all of these ideas lightly, right? And holding your ideas lightly, that's useful in not being overcome by bias, right? And so, I mean, everybody just brings their own thing, you know.
Okay.
My wife is an occupational therapist with some training in like life coaching. So she'll bring her own thing. And so whenever anyone speaks, it's just they're bringing kind of their own energy. And so whether it's Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, or atheism, we leave better than we came.
Nice. Hey,
Yeah.
real quick, just for housekeeping, there's a few people in the chat who I threw some wrenches to very recently. Feel free to utilize your wrench power if you see something going on that's a little awry. But appreciate you all, and want to make sure I recognize all the Patreon supporters in the chat. Appreciate you guys for showing up and being here. And I'll try to look out for comments, especially if my mic starts bugging out. Let me know. But I am kind of enthralled in the conversation, so I'll try to remember to keep an eye on the chat.
Right. And anybody, I'm watching my chat as well. If anybody has any questions for me or for Ichapod, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll ask them.
Yep. So you hit me up and say, hey, you got some time? You want to just get on? We have been going back and forth via text, WhatsApp for the last couple of weeks. And I think as the conversation progressed, one of the things that I wanted to know from you is, because I think I saw it on my channel, somebody had watched the video recently and they said that what you had been saying was very insightful for them. It actually gave them a way in their deconstruction to sort of reprocess what they were thinking about. Maybe they don't necessarily want to walk away from the God concept altogether. And it was really your idea about awareness being fundamental to reality.
Yeah.
And you and I have been going back and forth about, can that actually be the case? I told you why I don't think that's the case, and you told me why you thought it should be the case. But I think one of the questions I have, it seems like for you, how would you define God?
The omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent creator of the universe.
So omniscient, knowing all things,
right?
Instantly, not needing to find anything out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be instant from God's perspective. You know, so I think, and tell me if you agree here, so that maybe we can be on the same page. If there is an entity for which all knowledge, either latent or expressed, is contained within this entity, that entity would be all-knowing, right?
If there is an entity within which or whom, that's another good question we could ask, but an entity within which or whom all knowledge, either latent or actual,
either latent or expressed,
latent or expressed, is contained, then that entity would be all-knowing. Yes.
Yeah. So yes, that's all I mean by omniscient.
Okay. But I guess I'm not sure if that answers my question. Can this entity ever find out anything?
Yes.
That it didn't previously know.
So an omniscient being would not be able to find out anything because it already knows everything. So if it wanted to have a finding out experience, it would have to localize. just like you localize in a dream, and when you localize in that dream, you forget that you're truly in your bedroom sleeping, right? So in order for you to find out, like maybe if you wanted to have this kind of recursive reflective experience of yourself, you would have to do that from within a dream. So if God wanted to find something out, he would have to localize, and you are part of that localization. I think G.K. Chesterton said, and now a strange thing in the street seems every human nod, when shift in strange democracy the million masks of God. So you are one of those masks that God is wearing, and I'm one of those masks. And so God is seeing certain things through you. He's having an experience of learning through you. And that's perspectival knowing. And this is kind of, I think you're right when you said, because I've been thinking about this, you've been saying, oh, a lot of Christians wouldn't see things your way, right? But it's like, imagine, go get back into your Christian bag real quick. I want to ask you this as the Christian version of you. If you could think back, like when you were a Christian, what you would have said.
It's a switch. I could turn.
You could turn that right on. Okay, legit. So turn that Christian switch on. If I were to ask you, does God know what it's like to be Michael Jordan at the 3-point line when there's 10 seconds left? Does God know what it's like to be in that position?
I would probably have said, as a Christian, that God is probably the only being that is able to empathize with every being. And so in God's ability to empathize with its creation, I would have said his creation at that time, God can identify. Matter of fact, God would probably, who was it? I forget these people's names at this point. It's so long ago since I've been reading these folks, but there's one person who said every relationship that we experience, whether it be the husband, the father, the son, the sister, the brother, the friend, the enemy, the whatever, that God basically dreamed up 1,000,000 scenarios such that whenever we get ourselves into them, those scenarios are images or imaginings or some sort of like derivatives of something that was in the nature of God. So you're only a father because God has fatherness in his nature. You're only a friend because God has friendship in his nature. Everything that you experience, you only can hate things because God hates things. So whatever Michael Jordan is doing at the top of the key about to shoot that game-winning shot, there's something in the nature of God that God is allowing Michael Jordan to also experience. So it's not that God's looking at Michael Jordan like, oh, I think I can understand. No, it's Michael Jordan should be looking at himself and looking back at God saying, there's something about what I just did at that 3-point line that in the nature of God, that winning or that exhilaration or that whatever, that he would be able to say, I mirrored God in this instance. And I think I would have tried to find some kind of way to work that out.
See, but you would say that counts as knowledge, right? Like knowing what it's like, and only Michael Jordan knows what it's like to be Michael Jordan in that position. It's different than me pretending I'm Michael Jordan in that position. It's different than Scottie Pippen in that position, right? Only Michael Jordan knows exactly what it's like to be Michael Jordan in that position. But if you say that God doesn't know what it's like, right? Which most Christians, I would say, it's like, oh, does God know what it's like to rob a bank? Most Christians would say no. Well, if you leave God out of that, it seems that you're saying God isn't all knowing, or maybe that God's knowledge is limited to propositional knowledge, which is kind of the most useless type of knowledge. I mean, we need procedural knowledge more than propositional, right? We need perspectival knowledge and participatory knowing. Those are more important on a day-to-day. You know what I mean? But
I would argue that propositional knowledge precedes procedural knowledge. Like whatever procedure you're doing that based on the presuppositions that the things that you think about the world actually hold true. So without the propositional knowledge, I don't know if you could actually accomplish many procedural tasks.
I mean, when you were breastfeeding, when you first learned how to crawl, there were probably no propositions in your mind regarding those things. Those weren't propositional knowledge. Those were procedural knowledge. They get you gained skills. You knew how. So procedural knowledge is knowing how. Propositional knowledge is knowing facts. And so having access to facts, I think, is not as important as having access to skills. Like I could read a book about swimming and I could still jump in the water and drown. That's because the propositional knowledge doesn't teach me how to swim. I need the procedural knowledge, right? And then I have a power, right?
I think that's sort of, it can go both ways because, yeah, maybe I don't know how to swim right now, right? I don't know at all. Propositions would help me much more than procedural. Like, tell me what I should be doing with my legs and my arms when I get in that water. And even the person that gets in and figures it out procedurally, like, yo, I figured it out. Somebody with propositional knowledge could still come along and say, hey, but guess what? What you were doing isn't the most efficient way to do that. You know what I'm saying? But that's neither here nor there. The reason why I was actually bringing up the can God find out anything is one of the things that I would probably love to know from you. And I think I saw this before, but I think it may be helpful for other people to kind of see how you work this out. Because there are things in the Bible where you do, at least on the surface, it looks like God is finding out things and doing things so that he could know certain things, testing people and then saying after the test is over, now I know that you fear the Lord, or now I know that you trust, whatever. Now I know that you love me. And the way that Christians have traditionally explained that was, oh, no. God was just doing that. When he says, now I know, what he really meant was to Abraham, now you know. we do these linguistic tricks to make it so that God doesn't lose any of his omnis. But if you just took the text at face value, like, it seems like the ancients had no problem painting God without some of the omnis that we've become more comfortable with. And so I guess I'm curious, what do you do with an omniscient God who in the text looks like he's finding out things that he did not know previously?
I mean, the thing is, I take the text. I mean, I don't think that any biblical scholar assumes that the writers of those texts were like expert logicians or correspondence theorists, right? I think that they were using beautifully and usefully anthropomorphizations. And so I think what they wanted us to understand is the crux, the gist. Speaking of gist, what you're saying about God learning, I think that you would really like the works of Hegel. Hegel was a philosopher that believed that that God is actually learning and God is actually growing and maturing, and that the reason that we look back on history with shame and say, "Oh, how dare they do those things," is because God was more or less a toddler back then, and now God is more like a teenager, or whatever you would say. But that God is in this state of development. And that's kind of one of the things that actually made me want to have a conversation with you, is because, like, Hegel has this strange assertion, and it seems to ring kind of true the more I think about it. And Hegel's work is famously difficult to grok. So, well, first of all, what do you believe that you are? I think you'd be a materialist or physicalist. You would say, like, you are maybe particles fluctuating, you're just, time, matter, and energy. Is that what you would say you are?
I would say I'm not less than that. I don't know if I'm any more than that. And I don't think I have reason to, at this point, suggest that there might be more than that. But I think one of the things I often say to folks is, those who are clamoring for a supernatural explanation, sometimes I just suggest, what if nature is more super than we've been giving it credit for? So even if I were to say, yes, we are solely matter and energy and the way that they interact, but to me, that's not downplaying what we are. To me, I'm like, the chemical reactions that cause what we are and what we're able to do is amazing to me.
See, now, so, but like, if you are those chemical reactions, wouldn't that mean that you in some form has always been? being that matter can never be created nor destroyed, you existed in some form hundreds of years ago.
No.
Even the things which led to the perspective that you have now, right?
Mhm.
Those were making its way to this moment back then. The genes that you have were making its way to this moment back then. All of the people that had to meet each other and fight
Mhm.
with each other and marry each other in order to eventually produce you, was all happening a long time ago. And you're now on this phase of that process, claiming to be fully manifest, right? Even though you're just a continuation of this long process that began a long time ago, what right do you have to lay claim to anything, or
Right.
to say I am a self?
Right. So for me, that looking at it that way, like I've always been, I wouldn't say that, because whatever the matter and energy is that's currently allowing me to be this presentation,
Mm-hmm.
even if those particles have always been, even if they'll always be, they won't always be me. This configuration, for as far as I'm concerned, this is a limited time offering. You get this presentation of these particles for as long as I'm alive. And once they disintegrate and whatever they reintegrate as, it's not me anymore. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the matter that's in this room around me right now were parts of other things thousands of years ago, but it's not those things anymore. It's reconfigured. And
Well,
so,
but to
yeah,
say that it's reconfigured, are you talking about the room, or are you talking about yourself? Like
I'm
the,
talking about just what matter does.
but
It
you're
integrates and disintegrates and reintegrates. And when it reintegrates, it's not what it once was, even though the particles may in some elemental way be the same particles, but they're not, you know what I'm saying? It's not
you're
the
saying
same
they're
thing.
by saying they are not what they once were. You're saying they present themselves to me differently than they would have in the past.
Well, not just that, because they're an amalgamation. Like an amalgamation, once you take that thing apart and use those parts for other things, it's never going to be what it was. You know, once you like you can't, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here. Like you can't take a Lego city and take all, like now the Lego city, you got a train station, you got a mail, you got a post office, you got your bank or whatever, and you built this, and then somebody comes and not just simply takes the Legos apart, they zap it with a disintegration gun, so that even the particles that were making the blocks are not those, they're not blocks anymore.
Right.
And you scoop, let's say you come and you take a dustpan and you scoop some of them up and you go build something else. You take some of them up and you go build something else, and you blow some of them into the wind, and who knows what happens to them. You can't take those elemental particles and whatever now they become a part of, and say it's still the train station, it's still the bank, it's still the post office. It's not.
Right.
Those particles are all in the wind. Like so one of my former pastors.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, one of my former pastors was talking about the resurrection, and back when I was a Christian, this blew me away. Right, this you're talking like 15, 20 years ago. He said the dead in Christ are going to rise first, but he knew something about the scientific understanding of what happens to atoms, what happens to cells, what happens to matter as it decomposes. So he knew you couldn't just say, hey, go to that grave site and look in that grave, and if Jesus Christ were to come back right now, that body would get up out of that grave. No, the matter that was that body it's in a million different places now.
Right.
Right. But what this pastor said was, God is so powerful. God is so whatever he wanted to give God credit for being, that God's going to call all the atoms that was once this and was once that and was once that, and he's going to make all those atoms. Like, do you know how many things you would have to disintegrate to make those, whatever they're doing now, to make them go back to do what they were doing 1,500 years ago? You know what I mean? So like whatever you call them from being back to be what they once were, well,
Right.
now the things that you called them from being, that can't be anymore because it was something else before.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No. I totally get it, and that's the reason. I mean, I think that's one of the consequences of taking matter too seriously, right? Like it's just round and round we go. It's like
Mhm.
like matter and all of these things that present themselves to the human being. It's like we should have known this a long time ago.
Mm.
It's like I think in this day and age, it's a lot easier to say, well, man, like where did we actually get off assuming that evolved apes were actually ever going to have a one-to-one correspondence with reality? Like it's like a really arrogant yet elementary misstep. Of course, everything that we see is biased in terms of our desire to feed, fight, flee, and reproduce. Right? That's
There's
the
another
reason
F you could have used there, but you didn't.
Oh yeah, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and fucking.
Right.
Who is it? Who is it? Nature Red and Tooth and Claw. Her name is escaping me right now, but she's the one who came up with the 4 Fs.
Mm.
And so, because our biological chores are oriented in that direction, it should. I think it should come as no surprise to us that the things that we see and we take for granted are like definitely not what reality is like, right? It's it's what keeps us going, right? Like do you agree with that? I mean, you're not a naive realist.
Well, wait, boil that down because I was hanging on what you were saying, but what do you ask me if I agree with exactly?
So like take this ink pen, right? This ink pen can only be described in virtue of things which are not this ink pen. So I said, we describe things in terms of what they're not, right? Like if I say this ink pen is white, right? I'm talking about a property of it. If I talk about its weight, if I say this pen is heavy compared to other, it's actually heavy, right?
Mm.
I'm not describing this pen. I'm describing myself. It's not objectively heavy. The table doesn't think it's heavy, right? The table doesn't even think it's white, right? The table doesn't think it's useful at all. So whenever I'm describing things, I'm really kind of describing myself in relation to them.
Okay. Okay.
You buy that?
To an extent. Because the only reason why I hesitate is because with some intentionality, someone took the things that makes that ink pen and fashioned it and formed it and did what they needed to do to make it serve a certain purpose so that it has the functionality of an ink pen. So even though we could describe it in terms of things that aren't it, but once they get into that form, now that's what it is until it disintegrates.
Right.
Right. So it is that now, whether these terms are just descriptive or not, it is what it is.
See, but when you say it is what it is, what you mean, hopefully, is that this is the rendering that our brains will allow. It's not what the pen fundamentally is. Like this is not anywhere in like reality.
See, I don't make that distinction between reality, and what we're doing, what we're really doing. I don't make that distinction.
So you think that regardless of whether there were observers in the universe, there would be a white, heavy pin?
Well, no, like I said, with some intentionality, someone really did take the elemental matters that make up that pen and fashion it into a pen. And I can already hear a Christian saying, wait, don't you think the same thing happened with us? Someone fashioned us into what we are? But that's a different argument. Like it's so weird how I end up making points for Christians when I'm doing these. But all I'm saying is the reason why we know it as a pen right now is because someone with intentionality decided to fashion it into that for that function. And that really is what it is. Now, granted, you could put a magnifying glass on it and say, but if you go down to this level, it's not even that. It's plastics and it's this and it's, you know what I mean?
So it's so difficult because I'm trying to get down to what exactly we disagree on.
Right.
Because
where were you going with the question of what are you when you asked me what are you when I gave my response? Where were you going with that? Maybe that'll get us back on track.
Yeah, when I asked what are you, it's always me trying to separate the things you have from the
Mm-hmm.
things you are, and seeing if you can get there. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we go back into the having mode. It's like, well, if I say who are you, you'll say, oh, so I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a podcaster, I'm a rapper. Those are things you have. Those are skills you have. Um, but what are you actually?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more and more you do this philosophical practice of kind of undressing, taking off everything that is not your fundamental and true self, what you'll find is I am pure being. I'm pure subjectivity, right? And I'm not in control of my thoughts. You can't guess where your next thought is coming from. Like, I think what happens in terms of like the things that I think of next are just kind of an amalgamation of things that I've thought before or things that I've encountered before. Like, I couldn't possibly think of something that someone in India might have the ability to think of because of their experiences and
Mm-hmm.
because of their upbringing and their traumas, right? So my thoughts are not under my control. I can take them off autopilot and I can think about something intentionally, but what I fundamentally am is this pure subjectivity, pure awareness.
How do you become that?
It's not a becoming, it's a
You
being.
always were that.
Yes, and always will be.
So when you cease to be Lamont, well, how about this? Will you ever cease to be Lamont when you remember? For those who don't know, that's your idea of
Hmm.
when the human experience or the entity that's having this human experience is sort of reabsorbed back into the oneness of God.
Uh-huh.
That's your idea of remembering.
And I would say I've never been Lamont, or for those on my channel, I've never been Mr. Biscuit. Right?
Okay.
I've never been that. That's just a label for a series of patterns that are so consistent we can label it. So it's like my mom, right? If I call her mom,
Mhm.
mom is just a label for a very consistent set of patterns, a set of patterns that's so consistent that it goes back to my childhood. I can label mom, right? It's a series of patterns. And so when my mother passed, unfortunately, about 3 years ago, I said, okay, my mom was a human being, but deeper than that, she was a way of being, right? And now I can find that way of being in my daughter. I can find that way of being in certain friends that I've had. It's like, oh, okay, there's that same pattern, right? The pattern when it was all together, I used to call mom. Now that pattern is dispersed, right? But the way of being is what she actually was. And I prioritize that over the human being.
So I hesitate to ask this question
Hey,
because
hey,
I don't.
hey! Just to let you know, I think your mic is like really doing some gargoyle-y. I'm gonna read the chat while you're fixing that. It says
All right.
we were never apes. If that's the case, why do we still have them? That was from I Am Groot OG. Why do we still have apes uh, if we were apes before?
Does the mic sound better now?
Yes, the mic sounds better now.
Okay. I should, that's a comment that I wouldn't have read. Not to disrespect anybody, but I used to ask questions like that. That sounds like somebody who's only studied evolution from
Hey, your your
Christian.
your mic is doing it again.
What in the world? Oh.
The Reverend said, "Mom and Lamont are part of the ego." I completely agree. I completely agree.
1 2 1 2. How's that? Is it any better?
Yeah, that sounds better for now. Yeah.
1 2 1 2. Y'all let me know. Okay. Um, so I hesitate to ask this because I don't want to take any comfort away from anyone who gets comfort from ideas such as these. But when I hear that,
I don't think that anyone would be on this live if they were not willing to have their comfort challenged.
okay,
I would hope not.
all right. So when I hear that, what I think is how would you know First of all, 'cause it's one thing to think that and get comfort from it and say, yes, we are not human beings. We are ways of being that get locked into certain patterns that are recognizable and so much that you can count on. Oh, that's this friend and that's da da da. And then when I don't have them anymore, they went back to this big absorption of being that one day, what I know as me will also do that. Like, how do you know that that's the case? Number one. And two, how do you know that this is not just cope? Like things that people have come up with to make losing loved ones easier.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I'll say is when you say cope, it's also kind of a bias that I have. I have a bias against sugarcoating.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I like raw, unfiltered truth. And just because I like raw, unfiltered truth doesn't mean that it's not a bias. Right. I would actually, the way that I speak would be a lot more palatable to a lot more people if I didn't have that bias.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just because something feels good doesn't mean that it's not the truth or that you should elevate your skepticism toward that proposition. And I say that because I have that problem too.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if I haven't eaten for 3 days, eating would feel really good. And it doesn't mean I shouldn't eat, right? Just because it's self-serving or self-gratifying. But when you say, how do I know that I am a way of being? Well, absolute knowledge is very rarely forthcoming. There are very few things that I know. I don't even know that I'm not dreaming right now, right? So what we should ask is, what is the evidence for these things? Is this plausible? Meaning, is there converging lines of evidence and multi-aptness? Rather than saying, can you prove this, or do you know this thing absolutely? And what I would say to that is that for me, and this is one of the reasons that I have to engage with people like yourself who don't necessarily agree with me, is because you can say, oh no, you're missing this, you're missing something, your bias is getting in the way. So I would ask if you agree that this is more and more along the lines of the scientific consensus, that we are patterns. They would even say that about this pen. What looks like a pen is a low resolution image of what is truly and genuinely a series of patterns. There's molecules racing throughout this thing. The hardness means that the molecules are racing, I think, more slowly. Things that are hot have molecules that are racing more quickly than things that are cold. And my interpretation of the racing of those molecules comes across as texture and temperature. And then color, what I see as white, is in actuality a process. 500 million photons, 500 million photons per second are going into my eyes, right? And that process, what is truly and genuinely a process, looks from a low resolution to be a shade, white, right? And so when I say what appear to be static objects are in actuality relationships and processes and patterns, goes right in line with what the best minds are telling us right now. And that would be my evidence.
And this sort of goes into my original critique of what you were saying when I think our first conversation.
And I know that's an appeal to expertise.
Well, not that.
I'm not saying that because the experts, or because a certain amount of experts are on my side, I'm therefore correct. That would be a fallacy. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, look, I defer to the experts on this.
Right. But yeah, it seems that it almost is a equivocation, though, because to say I'm appealing to the experts about the way that they describe what's happening with this pen, or the way that they describe what's happening with, like, the experts are not saying, now maybe you do have some experts who would say, no, it applies to that too. But what you're saying about the pen that was in your hand, to say, and therefore that's the best way to describe what we are too. Like, I don't know how you get an expert opinion on that.
Aren't you a materialist or physicalist? Don't you just think we're a more complicated version of what's happening in the pen?
A more complicated version.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think is the fundamental difference between me and this pen?
Right. So I guess that's a good point, because I said it a minute ago, right? It's chemical reactions.
Yeah, you don't believe in things like spirits and souls, so
Right.
this should actually be easier for you than for me.
Yeah, maybe, and that's sort of what I was thinking about. Remember, I told you I was on my THC trip there last weekend, thinking about some of this stuff. I think there's a sense in which maybe I would allow, like, okay, human beings are ways of being, but even if I were to go that far to say, yes, we are ways of being, still none of that would, for me, dismiss the matter that is involved in our way of being. Like,
fine. Yeah. I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I think that our disagreement on how seriously to take matter,
But here's the deal. Here's the deal. The reason why it's so serious to me is because I don't think we get the emanations of ways that you're talking about, ways of being that you're talking about, without the matter. Like, even if you think about, people will say, no, somebody in the chat said it a while ago, we're energy. Human beings are pure energy.
See, but like, matter is how you can metacognize my ways of being. Remember, like when Jesus was asked, show us the Father, Jesus said, why do you ask me to show you the Father? He who has seen the Father has seen me. Meaning, if you want to see a way of being with your eyes, you have to see it through an object. It's like, if you want to see gravity, I can't just say, here, gravity. I have to grab an object and show you that way of being. I have to show you that pattern. You have to see it through an object. But that doesn't mean that the object encapsulates what it means. The way of being is what's fundamental.
Even in that description, though, you don't get gravity without objects. It's not like gravity, as far as we know, because we don't fully understand gravity, right?
Right.
As far as we know, gravity is not something doing stuff that just happens to affect objects. No, you don't get gravity without objects. It's because of the mass of something that creates gravity, that creates the curvature of space-time, as far as we understand right now. So all I'm saying is the ways of being that you're talking about, I don't see how you get these ways of being without the objects that, as far as we can understand, produce these ways of being, produce these effects that we see. What people want to call souls and spirits, show me them without the matter from which they emanate. See, that's what I'm saying.
Now, show me them without something that
demonstrate them, I guess, is what a better word.
But a demonstration is going to be a phenomenological one, or it's going to be it's either going to be a phenomenological demonstration, or it's going to be some sort of empirical demonstration, right? It's going to be something that you can see with your eyes or hear with your ears. And we already know that whatever you can hear and whatever you can see is biased in favor of your biology. It's not real. It's there for you to play with so that you can accomplish the evolutionary chores. We can't correspond with reality in a one-to-one way. I think we talked about this last time, where even the facts that are in your perception, like if you could see, I wish I could like point the camera down, you see my desk. I could see your room, right? You could see mine. How many facts are there about the image that you see? Unlimited, right? Infinite, right? There's a mic here. The mic is not white. The mic is a couple of inches from my mouth. The hat has orange on it. It has, you could continue naming facts forever, right? And so in order to not be paralyzed by the complexity of all the facts you have to deal with whenever you open your eyes, you ignore most of them. You background facts and you foreground facts, right? And you do that by means of a myth, right? There's a story that you're telling, and there's a story that your parents told, and there's a story that whatever pastor or whatever caused you to leave Christianity. That's all a part of this evolving story, which tells you it's okay to ignore these facts and it's okay to pay attention to these ones. We all have to ignore some because We can't even have this conversation. In order to listen to the sound of my voice, you're ignoring background noises in order to pay attention, right? And so how do you prioritize what to ignore and what to pay attention to, right? You can do that in a very maladaptive way. I think that's one of the reasons that religion works well for so many people. It's like, hey, we have this long track record of figuring out what to ignore and what to foreground. And it's a very risky thing. It's like I have a lot of atheists who are friends of mine. One of them is going to come on my channel and do some reactions with me. But it's a very bold thing to try to create that for yourself, to try to remake your salience landscape as an adult.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
So here's what I think it comes down to, because one of the questions that you keep asking is, where do we really differ? And I think we just discovered where we really differ, because when it comes down to the way that you define fundamental reality, you would define it as awareness. I'm always going to want to know awareness arising from what? And
if it's fundamental, it can't arise from anything. So the definition of fundamental means it's fundamental. It is the reduction base. There is nothing that it arises from.
Right. But in your fundamental concept of reality, matter is not fundamental, right?
No.
Awareness, and this was we can't reproduce the whole thing here. We had a good discussion offline about what awareness is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was saying that awareness is an abstraction, like blackness is an abstraction. It's a abstract concept taken from a description of something. But you don't see awareness as a description of something. You see awareness as an actual thing. And I guess I'm having the hardest time trying to conceive of this fundamental reality that is awareness. And I'm always going to ask, and I don't know how to not ask the question.
Awareness is not a property.
I think it is, but that's what I'm saying. How do you justify awareness as a thing in and of itself, as opposed to a thing that something else has? That's why I'm trying to understand. Yes, misinterpretation. She's right. That's exactly what we're talking about. And I'm trying to get the breakdown from Mr. Biscuit. This is idealism versus materialism.
So this pen is something that I have.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts are things that I have. They come and go. They're transient. I know that my thoughts are not me because they come and go. Sometimes I can take it off autopilot. I can think about something intentionally, and then I can just put it back on autopilot and have my thoughts just continue to go. The shirt is not me. My arm is not me. So there's a difference between the being mode and the having mode. I happen to think that the palace of Siddhartha Gautama in Buddhism, his palace represented the modal confusion that a lot of Western thinkers are under. This confusion about the being mode and the having mode, right? Do I know what I am as apart from what I have, right? And subjectivity, awareness, is not something you have. It's something you are, right? Because without awareness, you would have nothing. Without an arm, I would still be aware. Without both of my arms, I would still be aware. I think it's become controversial in today's day and age to say that without my head, I would still be aware and the reason that's controversial is because I wouldn't be able to give you signs of awareness without my head, right? The signs of awareness would go away if my biology died. But just because signs of awareness disappear don't mean that awareness disappears any more than the signs of combustion disappear when the fire goes out, right? Combustion can exist without flames. So just because the flames die down doesn't mean that there isn't combustion. We talked about this with, I think, electrostatic discharge. Like, just because there isn't lightning doesn't mean that there is not electrostatic discharge or electrostatic pressure in the air, just because that electrostatic pressure hasn't localized and hit, the zenith, I guess, necessary to create a lightning bolt, doesn't mean there is no electrostatic pressure, right? It just means that it hasn't localized and showed it to your senses. So I think that that's kind of the mistake that we make.
And I think one of the things that I was trying to point out, you said this just a second ago, you said you're not aware, you are awareness. And I think that's where I would disagree. Aware is something that we say you are if you're aware. I don't think I would ever say to somebody your awareness. I would say, hey, are you aware right now? So for you, it would never be fitting to ask the question, is someone aware? Because as far as you're concerned, they are always awareness. It's not about whether or not they're aware or unaware.
Yeah, like when I say I am aware, I'm telling you what I am, not something I have. Or if I were to say I am awareness, I think that's the same difference. I use those two terms synonymously.
If I say I'm aware, I'm talking about a state of being, not a statement that I am being. Like that's the difference for me. Aware can be a state that I enter into as long as I have the ability to get there. If you cut my head off, I no longer have the ability to enter into the state of being aware. I don't remain awareness once you chop my head off.
Right, and I think that's a guess, right? So for me, are you familiar with the subject-object distinction?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and we speak in terms of the subject-object distinction. Like, I have a green pen, I am thirsty, I am having a conversation with you, where I am the subject, you are the object. And if you were to say, the word I is a deictic expression, which means that the word I, the definition of I changes depending on the speaker. You are a subject. You are a subject. You have objects, right? So subjectivity is what you are. It's the being mode, right? The object is in the having mode. Is that fair? So
I hear you, but my mind goes to I am an object having a subjective experience.
You're an object having a subject, okay. So let's test that theory this way. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of any other objects besides the one in question? I guess you're saying you're an object that has a subject. Are you having a
subjective experience?
You're having a subjective experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the subjective experience that you're having,
mm-hmm.
you're saying that isn't you.
No, that's what makes a me. The ability for an object to have subjective experience makes the self. That is the self. I think that's what I mean when I talk about self, is an object that has the ability to have subjective experience.
An object that has the ability to have a subjective experience. So let's take this phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
If this phone were to become conscious, right? Would it be a phone with consciousness, or would it be a subject with a black slender body? I think we would say I imagine that we would say the latter. I love these kind of conversations, because would you say?
Well, immediately my mind goes to AI when you start talking about the ability for computers to seem as if they're having subjective experience.
Hey, Tyler, I deeply appreciate it. He sent 2 super chats in. So
let me read the super chats real quick.
Okay, go.
There was 2 of them. Is Tyler from your channel?
Yes.
You want to read it?
Yeah, he says, I think when you try to grasp how big and how small the world is, you see that we are only one tiny point in infinity.
I got no qualms with that.
Respectfully.
Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Let me see.
Thank you. And he says, we are made up of atoms and molecules, which are made up of electrons and protons, which are made up of quarks and gluons, which are made up of infinite. Yeah,
so yeah, go ahead.
It's like when we talk about like subatomic particles,
mm-hmm.
Subatomic particles are just metaphors for excitations in an underlying field, right? They're not, you can't, stop them and measure them. They are here for a moment. You can only measure them in terms of what they've left behind, and they're gone, right? And the field can't be measured apart from them. And so that I think kind of, dealt a serious blow to physicalism, in my view, to say that what's fundamental can be measured, because, I mean, either that's maybe we don't have what it takes to measure, but I don't like scientific promissory notes, right? Saying, oh, we'll have what's necessary in the future. It's like, I want to deal with what we have now. And I think that the phenomenologists, specifically the idealists, kind of have it best.
I have one more question for you, and then if you have any for me, we can go to it. Let me got another super chat from David Divide. Thank you, yo, for the €5 super chat. Appreciate you, yo. Something you said to me in our offline conversation. You were talking about this fundamental awareness and God, and the idea of yous and me's, right? Of us individuals. And you said something to the effect, I'm probably going to butcher it, so please restate it if you don't mind. I'll just ask the question, I'll let you answer it from jump.
Mm-hmm.
How does the one fundamental awareness that is I guess let me ask you this. The fundamental awareness, is it supernatural?
I'm not sure what you mean by that term. Like, supernatural doesn't appear in most religious texts. I think it's like a 16th century term, which meant things which we don't know, things which are unknown as of yet.
When I use the term supernatural, I mean it is something that is beyond the realm of what is natural, what naturally occurs, what naturally is.
Right. And then
it's outside of that.
And you see how that is kind of begs the question, what do you mean by natural then?
Natural, when I think about natural, I'm thinking about, I guess it is going to get down to materialism. It's going to get down to the world as we can know it, even if we don't have the ability to know it yet.
I think my entire philosophy around religion, my entire theology is based, it's extremely skeptical. It's extremely skeptical. It's based on phenomenology, what I know, what I can feel right now. So I say, first of all, the only thing that I know for certain, and I extend this to you, and I hope you agree, the only thing you know for certain is that you are aware. Now, you can say, awareness is something I have, but you have to abandon phenomenology in order to get there. You have to then venture a guess or come up with some theory. But I'm saying, before we theorize, we feel, right? Like, phenomenology is about direct experience. And so I'm like, the only thing that I can take to the bank and that I know for sure is that I am aware. Awareness cannot be an illusion, because awareness is the prerequisite for an illusion, right? Awareness cannot be doubted, because awareness is a prerequisite for doubting. In order to doubt, I must first be aware. In order to have an illusion, I must first be aware, right? So awareness is not an illusion. It cannot be doubted. And furthermore, the more scientific data pours in, they tell me not to trust secondary properties as fundamental, specifically in like high energy physics. And so I'm just, the skeptical standpoint, I'm saying, okay, if we want something spaceless, timeless, immaterial, enormously powerful enough to boot up what we're experiencing right now, I believe awareness is the only candidate. Like, I don't know of any other candidate.
And that's a whole conversation that we had offline about, because you are aware, and because I am aware, and because we're aware of our awareness, I think it's premature, and I think it's problematic to put the thing that we, like you said, I don't think I can disagree with that. That awareness is the thing that we cannot doubt. Like that's the one thing that I have that I cannot doubt.
So
Or
why
you would say
not
the one thing that I am.
why not prioritize it then?
Because I think, like I said, in humility, I think it would be a mistake or sort of arrogant for me to take the thing that I know about me and then to project that onto all of reality.
But it's the only thing you know about anything. And all of your projections about reality stem from it and your biases. So it's like what you know about anything you know about anything is far more biased than the awareness. So it's like even in that, it deserves priority. The real arrogance would be to go with one of your theories that you've conceptualized, right? Like it's not arrogant to go with the thing all of us know and all of us share. Even animals share it.
But if we go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If we share the awareness, this is the thing that I was saying to you offline, and maybe in one of our online conversations. We only know awareness to come from beings such as ourselves. And we know that we are beings like ourselves, sentient beings, seem to be late on the stage of the universe. And so if we're going to go off of what we know phenomenologically, if the only things that we know that have awareness are latecomers, why would I take that awareness and try to put it back on things that predate the aware beings that we know ourselves to be? I don't know what I'm using to say, because we're aware and we're here now. I therefore am going to take that awareness and put it back on all that predates me. Like, why would I do that?
When you say that something predates you, you're saying it predates something you have.
I'm saying it predates the beings that we know awareness to stem from. We don't know awareness to stem from anything other than.
But you're already, when you say awareness stems from, I think awareness is the reduction base.
Right.
It stems from nothing.
It
doesn't stem from anything.
But we only know of awareness from beings like ourselves. That's the only way that we know.
No. I would reverse that. I would say we only know beings like ourselves from awareness. So what you want to say is the exact opposite of what I think is true. What you're saying is we only know awareness through beings like ourselves. And what I'm saying is awareness is primary to our understanding of beings like ourselves. It is the prerequisite for understanding.
And so I tried to ask this, I think last time we were online. Before there were humans, before there were anthropods of any kind, before there was any, as far as we can tell, life on Earth, right? You argue that there was awareness.
Yeah.
How?
I think because space and time are not fundamental and awareness is.
But you're asserting awareness is. I'm asking you, how do you substantiate that it is before the arrival of I can't even say it because it's like before the arrival of human beings and sentient creatures. How do you assert that there was awareness?
Let's take it this way. There's a great line from Tool. I did a Tool reaction video, and the song is called 46 and 2. And it's one of the baddest Tool songs I've heard. And he says, "Black and white are all I see in my infancy. Yellow and red then came to be, giving me all I see." Right? And I might have butchered that line. But he's talking about, in my estimation of that lyric, he's saying, in the womb, it was all black. Then I was born into sunlight and it was all white, or into the hospital room and it was all white. And then yellow and red came to be, which my wife then validated as like infants. Yellow and red then come in, and then you start to be able to see things. So you built your salience landscape, right? So when you came out of the womb, there was no agent arena distinction. Nor in the womb was there a distinction between you as an agent and the womb as an arena, right? You learned to believe in that myth of an agent arena distinction. You learned those patterns. Your cortisol, the stress that you felt as a baby, your cortisol would lower when you were held against your mother's chest. You're like, okay, that's the beginning of pattern recognition. That pattern became so regular that you began to call that warmth mom, right? Mama. Like the dad might have been so consistent that you start to call that pattern dada, right? And you notice like you're starting to, our brains are pattern creating machines. They're so good at creating patterns that you can go to sleep and it will create an entire island that you can walk around at. It's just like, and you localize within that dream. It's like your brain is just good at doing that. But it's an illusion. And I think that the illusion is so difficult to keep up. That's one of the reasons we need 8 hours of sleep. It's an absurd amount of sleep we need, because our brains are like are processing, and interpreting all the raw data into simple forms that we can use, right? And the simple usable forms, they're so regular that we confuse them for reality, and we think that we understand and have come across the truth, when the truth is, prior to all of the objects, I think what the baby experiences in the womb is far more true than what he or she learns outside of it. And that's not to say that the illusion isn't beautiful. I think it's more beautiful when you realize that it's an illusion. When you don't take it literally, you can still take it seriously. Like I'm a husband and I'm a father, right? My wife is an idealist too, but we're like, look, like this whole thing is beautiful and it's creative, and it's my salience landscape is built just for me, and yours is built just for you.
So
you've created your own universe.
Who did? Who created the universe? The universe that I experienced. Who created it?
You.
And what am I?
Your God breath, fundamentally.
So this gets back to the question I was trying to work my way toward. One of the questions I had for you was, if awareness is fundamental, how did awareness become disintegrated to the point where there's a me and there's a you?
I would say that occurs through dissociation. So there's lots of theories on how God takes on the illusion of multiple people, right? My favorite theory on how that happens is from Dr. Bernardo Kastrup. He's a PhD in computer science and another PhD in philosophy. And I had the pleasure of actually corresponding with him on the Clubhouse app, and we exchange emails every now and then. But he believes in a process called dissociation, and all minds dissociate. And we talked about this off the phone too. A weak form of dissociation would be like compartmentalizing after an argument. So if you and your wife, if you and your loved one got into a big fight, you could compartmentalize that fight in order to go to work. Like, let's say you have a dangerous job. You have to compartmentalize that and focus on work. That is a weak form of dissociation. Then there's a slightly stronger form of dissociation, which occurs when you dream, right? When you dream, you actually create a dissociative alter, a dissociative, you localize within the dream, and you create like a private identity within that dream world. And then you reestablish membership in the waking world, or you remember when you wake up. Then the strongest form of dissociation that we're aware of is dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder. But all minds, I believe, don't quote me on this part, but I think all minds, even animal minds, dissociate, right? And so it's just something that consciousness is capable of doing. And so according to Bernardo Kastrup, that's what God does. God dissociates into multiple identities who have forgotten themselves due to their temporary localization. So after you die, the objective pole of experience will melt away, and you will remember or reestablish membership in pure subjectivity. You will go back to God, and you'll remember.
When you say you'll remember, if I go back to God, if God is dissociating, one, I don't. That's a little odd because it's almost like God has mental issues if God is dissociating into, trillions of people who've lived over the course of time. That's a lot of personalities to have a personality disorder with.
With God,
That's
I wouldn't call it a disorder. The reason it's a disorder with humans is because it's maladaptive. It can actually like cause you to like run out in the middle of traffic, and you have to really be careful with who you associate with so they're not taking advantage of you. The reason it's maladaptive to have dissociative identity disorder as a human being wouldn't apply to pure subjectivity.
But if pure subjectivity is having this dissociative experience in trillions of people, and those trillions of people are raping one another, are killing one another, are extorting one another, and sometimes being kind to one another, that still seems to be maladaptive to me.
Sure. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think there's a lot of different reactions that people can have to being separated from their source, right? Like we know that there is something, there is something that we desperately want to return to, and it causes kind of like this ache that we don't necessarily know how to fulfill. Like remember, I talked to you about how I can do an English accent, right?
Mm.
But if I do an English accent, or if I do an Indian accent, my true and authentic accent will be begging me to return. And that pull, that what I call it impinging, I am impinged upon by my natural accent. And what that means is I feel a subtle pressure to stop doing the accent. It's almost like when you're planking. It's like if you've been planking for like 2 minutes, you're impinged upon to stop planking. Your muscles start to get tense. Your muscles start to get sore. You want to return to the natural state. And so I think that there's a frustration that occurs when we're dissociated. Like in this temporary thing, it can be very, very frustrating. And a lot of people, react to the dissociation in anger, and with rage, and do all kinds of things.
So let's go back to something that you said in our first conversation. God does not have intentions or desires, correct? In your thinking?
Yeah, in order for God to desire anything, he would have to localize within his own consciousness, as in like a dream. So if God wanted to have a desire or wanted to experience desire, he would have to do that through one of the million masks, namely through you or me.
Right.
Just
So he could not have the desire before he dissociated. He
no,
would have to
because
dissociate and then desire as one of these, I guess, one of these instantiations of awareness. Then he could desire.
yeah. So I think God in his purest being is completely fulfilled.
So if God in his purest being does not have desires or intentions and can only have those once dissociated, why or how does God become dissociated in the first place if it has no desire to do so?
Dissociation is, I think it would be spontaneous, just like the excitations in a quantum field are spontaneous, right? And
But
I take very seriously the fact that I'm not a physicist, but I think that the subatomic particles or the excitations in a field are spontaneous, which means this is just how the field behaves, and the
but they're
dissociate.
all but they're
Go ahead.
reacting and decaying, right? It's not just that they,
So are we.
for reasons unknown, they don't know why they're
Hmm.
doing what they're doing. They're
We're
reacting and decaying.
so are we.
Right. We might be, but I guess my question goes back to the pure awareness that is God. If there's no desire or intention,
Hmm.
and like you said, God is all powerful, how does this pure subjectivity or this pure experience, this awareness of God, why or how would it ever does it want to disassociate or no? Like it doesn't. So
It,
how
it,
does it
it,
happen?
it has no desires. It happens spontaneously. So just like the field doesn't desire for subatomic particles to, to be excitations of it, right? The field has no desire for subatomic particles. It's just an activity, a spontaneous activity of the field. So I
Does
think dissociations are a spontaneous result of God's natural blossoming and overflowing. It's nothing that God desires to do. I don't think God has any desires.
I have questions. I don't know what they are. That's just it's so counterintuitive to the idea of omnipotence and omniscience.
How so?
Because if I have omnipotence, I don't just have power over that which is, and I guess this is a whole other conversation we could have. I don't just have power over all things. I have power over myself. I have self-control. If I don't have self-control, I can understand why I would be percolating and, dissociating all over the place. But if I have self-control, if I have power over myself, why? And I don't have any desires, how could I ever spontaneously combust to the point where I was one, but now I'm disintegrated?
Yeah. And I don't think that I don't think there ever was a time where God was not doing what God is doing. Time and space are data compression tools for human beings. Time and space are not fundamental. But there is a super. It's not a super chat. It's a question. Billy said in my chat, "Why aren't we born with a knowledge of God?" I think we are. We're just not born with propositional knowledge of God. When we're born, we have no distinction. We don't recognize a distinction between ourselves and anything else. That comes later, right? And I think God is in that very same state where God recognizes no difference between himself and you or any other thing, right? And I think that that's what true love is. Like, love is the dissolution of dissociation. As a human being, I can't necessarily get there, but what I can do as an extension of God's love is a felt recognition of our shared being. And so when I see you, Ichapod, when I say I love you, what I'm saying is I have a felt recognition of our shared being, right? And so I can treat you as if you and I are fundamentally one and the same. And then that is going to extend to my treatment of you.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm curious. The pen that you held up several times,
Mm-hmm.
do you, in your love for I don't even know how to say it. Do you have the same love for that pen that you have for me? And if so, why? And if not, why?
That's a good question. I would say instead of love for the pen, I see beauty in the pen, right? And so, and what beauty is, the difference between beauty and love is, beauty is what happens when you see yourself reflected in a thing. So when I see the pen, I know this pen, like you can see that little blue line right there, the gray, how easy it is to hold it, all of its transjective properties. I share a lot with the pen. Like the pen wouldn't have those properties without me being here. Like it wouldn't be this particular shade or this particular texture. Texture and shade, all of that is in my mind, right? And so I can see beauty in the pen. The reason I wouldn't go as far as to say that I love the pen is because though the pen is made of awareness, it is not aware, right? So if I have a dream, and let's say I dream about a tree, the tree is made of awareness. It's made of mental stuff, but the tree is not aware, right? And so I don't share my being with it. With you, you're not only made of awareness, your physical body and your environment, your arena, but you are actually aware.
I'll come to the super chat in a second. So you say the tree is made of awareness, but a minute ago you said awareness is not a property. So when you say it's made of awareness, what are you actually saying it's made of?
I love that you caught that. I appreciate you catching that. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, if you break the tree down to its reduction base, you will find awareness. So awareness is the reduction base in my metaphysics, right? So if you break the tree in the dream down to what it actually is, it's made of awareness.
So you're comparing the reality that we think we experience with whatever realities people are concocting in their dreams. And as real or unreal as the dreams are, you're saying that the things in the actual world that we touch, they're just as dreamlike. They're just as not real. They're made of the same kind of awareness. The things in around us are made of awareness, just like the contents of our dreams are made of the active awareness that we have when we're dreaming. Is that what you're sort of saying?
Right.
That's a very interesting.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons that Christians believe that human beings are just a microcosm of the divine tendency, right? God wants to create habitable order out of chaos, and that's exactly what I do in my universe. It's like this is the reason for the desk and the microphone and all of the colorful
here's
objects.
The thing I really need you to speak to, because as interesting as that is, the question comes back to, okay, so then if awareness is the stuff that all stuff is made up of, just like our dreams are made up of our active awareness, the stuff that we're calling stuff in reality is made up of awareness, of God's awareness, even though, because even when I talk about God's awareness, I'm talking about a being that has the awareness, but you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say God is a being that has awareness. You would simply say that God is awareness itself. So if that's the case, my question to you is, well, then what is matter? What is material? If it's just the stuff that awareness propagates, what actually is it? If it's not like the stuff that my mind does, right? That's chemical reactions, coloring, creating pixels in my mind and coloring them in. And my mind is doing that, but it's not real things, right? The visions of sugar plums dancing in the heads of children at Christmas, they're not real sugar plums. They're not made of real things. In the world that we live in, we actually have matter, but you're saying, no, that matter is just the product of awareness. And I guess I'm trying to understand. So, but I think maybe you've answered it. The matter is not real, is what you're saying. None of it's real.
I mean, it's real. It's just not fundamental. So when we're talking about metaphysics, we're talking about the reduction base, which is what you will find if you search ad nauseum, like what cannot be broken down or reduced any further. We already know atoms can be reduced to smaller things. And whenever you get to subatomic particles, right? Subatomic particles, I think it was a 1940s paper on electrodynamics. It said, it actually used the word metaphor, that subatomic particles are just metaphors for excitations in an underlying field. So it's like, where is your matter? Like, if we're talking about what's fundamental, where is the matter? I mean, in high energy physics right now, they're saying space and time themselves are not fundamental, that there are things which actually cause as emergent properties space and time, right? So it's like, I think the Planck length for space is like 10 to the negative 36, and for time it's something similar. It's like beyond that you can't even probe. Like you can't probe for distances smaller than the Planck scale, or for time variables smaller than the Planck scale. And I think Nima Arkani Hamed said you'll create a black hole if you try to probe.
I was trying to not go there, but that's exactly what I'm thinking. Like, even when we talk about space and time not being fundamental, how much do you factor into those kinds of statements? The caveat that most astrophysicists put on the end of that, they talk about our local presentation of space-time. Very few of them, from what I've seen, are talking about matter and space. Are talking about space and time at all. They're not talking about and this is all they're talking about the way it presents to us locally.
Right.
And more, you're starting to see people return to the Penrose idea that we actually could be inside of a black hole right now. So that what we're talking about when we talk about space time is we're talking about the way that it appears to us in our location in the universe, not as if we can talk about what happened before the Big Bang.
Right. I do have a super chat, yeah. And I wanted to get to it. Carly Flowers. Okay. And she said, Mr. Biscuit, can you give your opinion? Okay, there it is. It just popped in front of the screen. Can you give your opinion on the double slit experiment, please. This convo is right up my alley and very inspiring. Look, I think when it comes to a question like this, it would be inappropriate for me not to repeat that I take very seriously the fact that I am not a physicist. It's just very important we are two friends just chopping. You know what I'm saying? I was like,
and let me add to that, I run from people that try to make too much of the double slit experience, because people try to do that all the time. But
yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know what the double split experiment is, they shoot particles through two slits, and when you're not observing, hang on one second. I want to look this up so I can explain it right, and then I'll give Bernardo Kastrup, who's someone who I follow, who I've talked to. He actually worked at CERN. He's a scientist, and so I'll give what he has said about his interpretation. He's also an idealist like myself. But the setup: you fire particles like electrons or photons at a screen with two slits, one in front of the other. So with no observation, if you don't observe which slit they go through, the particles act like waves, interfering with themselves, and you get a wave interference pattern on the detector screen. Observation happens. If you place a detector at the slits to observe which slit the particle goes through, the wave-like behavior collapses and the particles behave like individual particles. The interference pattern disappears. So what I've heard Bernardo say about this really wacky and freaky phenomena, by the way, I was there. I remember the first time I heard about the double slit experiment. I was with my mom, and we were just kind of marveling at how crazy this was. And a lot of people, they know where they were when they first kind of heard about this, that this was possible. But what I've heard Dr. Kastrup say about this as an idealist, what the idealist would say is that attention and focused awareness or observation is exactly what causes wave-like properties to behave as if they are marbles or particles, right? Like, I don't believe that, there's no one in my house right now. I don't believe that, and I'm downstairs in my office. I don't believe that anything upstairs, that there's anything happening upstairs. I don't believe that, that there's color upstairs. I don't believe that there's texture upstairs. Those things are waiting on my consciousness in order to enact the transjective properties. So, because I know, regardless of whether you think that all observers are conscious, or that you think, some observer, can be, put there that's not conscious. Regardless of what you think about that, I at least count as an observer, right? And so as I ascended up the stairs, I would be collapsing wave functions, because that's exactly what consciousness does. It collapses, fundamental reality into something usable for the being that I am. And I think it was not only Carl Friston, but Ian McGilchrist, Dr. Ian McGilchrist. They say the brain does not emit consciousness nor transmit consciousness. It permits consciousness, right? Consciousness is a far bigger thing, and the brain just permits it through a filter so that whatever we get, we can use, right? For, to continue living and breathing and acting in ordinary life. I don't know what you would have to add to that.
Well, I have two. I always have to go back to how I process these kind of things as a Christian versus how I process them now. I remember getting excited in it was a psychiatry class in Bible college, actually. Not psychiatry, psychology, intro to psychology course. And we were talking about this idea of the double slit experiment. We were talking about if there is no observer around, if a tree falls in the forest kind of an idea.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we try to justify theism was to say that there is always an observer, even when there are no human ears around to hear the tree fall even when there are no human eyes upstairs in your apartment to see the color in the furniture or to see there's always an observer, because God's eye is always, beholding all that is. And because God is always observing reality, it always manifests the way he intended it to manifest. And I got excited about that, thinking, that's why reality can subsist, because he's upholding everything by the word of his power, as scripture says.
Yeah.
Fast forward. Did you have a thought about that?
No. I want you to continue.
So fast forward, having deconstructed and deconverted, I look at that now and I say, no, the reason why I'm upstairs in my house, right? Is my couch still downstairs? Is the TV still on the wall? Are the walls still the same color as they were? Some of those questions can be answered. Some of those questions will be answered a little bit differently in terms of, are they still the same color? Because like you pointed out, color is a phenomenon that happens when our eyes do what they do, between the way that the light is passing to the cones and rods in our eyes and all that. But
right,
it's not because God is beholding it that my living room is still downstairs and the pots are still in the cabinet. It's because, for me, matter is real, because the material world is real. And because the material world is real, it does not disappear when I'm not here to behold it. And as far as I understand about the history of the world and the universe, it was real before there was a mind to realize that it was real, because of what matter is.
Let me ask you this. If you're dreaming and you walk up to a door, and right as you put your hand to the doorknob, you don't know what's behind the door. Right as you put your hand to the doorknob, you wake up. Was there anything behind the door? So
right now, what you're doing is you're giving me all kinds of.
I'm just asking.
No. I'm just saying.
Do you believe there was anything behind that door? If you didn't open it.
There's a metaphor here that I was trying to get to, but I just lost it. Well, I think I question the question, because the question is not, was there anything behind that door? The question is, was there really a door? As somebody in the chat just threw up there as I was thinking it, there was no door, right?
Right, but I mean, but if the person in the chat says there was no door, they're only talking about the high resolution. We're talking about the low resolution even right now. I mean, I could say the boy in the Matrix said there is no spoon, and he was right. Like, do you think there's really a lighter? It's like Morpheus said, how do you define real?
Right, but see,
isn't it all patterns interpreted by your brain?
I don't go that far. I would not put what's happening in my dreams on the same level as what's happening in the world that I experience when I awake from that dream. I don't think that it's the same thing. I don't think that life is God's dream, such that, he could just wake up and then all this would go away and we'd realize that, we were really in heaven with him the whole time.
Are you in a room with a closed door?
I am.
Okay. So you believe that there's something outside that door even now?
Yes.
Okay. So what that means is that there is color. There's actually color without eyes behind that door. Or do you say whatever is out there is colorless?
Whatever is out there is going to interact with my eyes once.
Right. But it hasn't. I agree that. I agree with that. But it hasn't.
And when my eyes are not interacting with it,
there's no color.
Well, as far as I understand color is something that happens in here, not something that happens out there.
Correct. So whatever's out there behind that closed door does not have any color. It's colorless.
Well, I wouldn't say that it doesn't have colors. I think it has properties. And if there is light out there, it has those properties and the light interacting with it. But it's not going to do certain things.
But even light is colorless. Light is not even bright without your eyes. So saying there's light out there doesn't add anything to the problem, right?
Right, but I'm saying the light is not doing what it would be doing if my eyes were, what I'm saying, if the light was between the object and my eyes.
So
it's not doing
fair. So again, is there color? Is anything colorful beyond that door right now? Because there are no eyes on it.
Without an observer, I would wager. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I would wager that no, that property is something that comes into play with the observer.
Okay. Okay.
But
So
but the objects
whatever.
themselves are not in that same category.
So whatever's beyond the door, and
Mhm.
eventually I want to get us to the point. So right now, whatever's beyond that door is colorless. Is whatever is beyond the door, does it have any texture? Does it feel like anything?
Once again, without an observer, without a feeler, without someone to introduce that reaction, this gets back to another point I was going to try to get to. But no, so without someone to interact with it, there are certain aspects of it that will not certain aspects of the matter that will not matter or even manifest without someone to interact with it.
Okay. And so you would agree then that there is nothing beyond your door.
No,
So you would say that there is something.
I would say that there are many things beyond the door, and some of the properties of those things will only come alive or only be experienced. Like they're not in the thing themselves. There's something that happens between my eyes or my hands and the thing itself.
Can you tell me something that's beyond the closed door? Like for me, I'm downstairs. So if I were to open that door, I think I would see I would see a dryer and a washing machine. That's what I predicted I would see. But
Mhm.
as of now, being that the door is closed,
Mhm.
those things are not there. Those things those things manifest when I open the door. And the reason I say that is because all of the properties of those items require my attendance to them. And I think that's kind of what.
So your
And
car,
I hope I'm doing Bernardo justice.
your
Go ahead.
car is only outside once you see it outside.
Once anyone does,
Right. If no one sees it outside, it's not there.
absolutely not. No,
Yeah.
because I don't have the right to prioritize my resolution in my absence. Right. So it's like that car, I think you would agree, like my car, I have a 2022 Toyota Corolla, right? It's good on gas mileage, right? Don't at me. But that car, at a certain resolution, it's just fluctuating molecules, right? It's just atoms in a state of flux, right? But even those atoms, even the fluctuating molecules, are just what human beings notice when we do our testing, right? Who knows what the reality is when humans and our equipment is totally absent? So why would we prioritize the human resolution, right? The resolution which is only here for our adaptive feed, fight, flee, and reproduce biological tendencies. Like, why would we prioritize that in our absence, as if the world exists just like we think it does? No, it's
Well,
biased
it,
in our
it may
favor,
not
right?
be just like we think it is, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's some mass
But
extinction
when
event,
you say it's not there, you're saying the thing you think is there. That's the
the
it.
properties, the matter, like so let's just say mass extinction event, all life on Earth is wiped out. Right? Is your house still on Earth?
I would say no.
Yeah, I couldn't get there.
Because
Uh,
the reason you can't get there is
so let me
because
ask
you're imagining that your perspective is still present,
let
and
me
it's
let me ask
very
you this.
difficult. Yeah,
Let
go
me
ahead.
ask you this. Mass extinction event, all life on Earth is wiped out.
Hmm.
Is the matter that made your house what you knew to be your house, is it still in the form that it was in when you were living in it?
No.
How did you know that?
Well, I mean, I don't base this off. I don't base things off of knowledge. I mean, I just have what I believe. It's not based on an absolute knowledge, but the reason I don't think that matter would still be there if life was destroyed is because matter is what human beings use to interpret and predict the future.
All
So
right. So
matter presents itself to us because it's evolutionarily adaptive for the human species to think of reality in terms of breaking down in terms of matter, right?
one last
But I'm not going to privilege what's useful to human beings, especially in our absence.
one last iteration. All life on Earth is wiped out.
Hmm.
10 years in the future, a space station mission is complete, they come back to Earth, back to your city, back to your neighborhood, and they see your house still standing. Was your house standing in the 10 years between when life was eradicated and the time that they came back? Was your house still standing?
What is the spaceship that comes back filled with humans or aliens?
Yes, humans.
Humans, yeah. Humans would see.
But was it standing in the 10 years in between?
No.
Okay, I don't know what to do with this combo.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this: does your house exist according to an ant?
Well, when I say does the house exist, the way I rephrased the question was the matter that makes your house,
right? But you're
still in the same.
Even when you say matter makes up the house, that is a human scientific, human centric, and human adaptive interpretation of what's going on.
But no,
I'm saying, how do you know that that's not just something humans came up with in order to feed, fight, flee, and reproduce better? Why do you think matter is like really fundamentally real?
Even if that's the case, even if it's just something that humans conceptualize, what I'm asking is, does the matter behave the same way without a human there to see it behaving that way?
No, I don't believe so. Why would
So
it?
how does the house stay standing for 10 years such that somebody can come back 10 years later and see it in the same place?
It doesn't. So the idea that the house is standing now is just as human centric as it would be if some other human being showed up, right? Human beings only can accept a very filtered version of reality. We see reds and blues and greens. There are certain shapes that we don't have access to. There are colors we don't have access to. There are textures that we can't feel, right? Maybe the house has some of those colors and textures, and I immediately, because of my biology, I background them. I can't possibly put up with them. They would be overwhelming and therefore kind of paralyzing, right? All I can handle is what reality will grant my biology. And so when I see a house, I see a very filtered version of reality that human brains are likely to see if they interact with reality in that way. So when human consciousness is gone, so is everything that we make up. So is our interpretation of reality. So if another human were to come 10 years from now, they would still kind of go with that same resolution, that same low resolution image of a house that benefits their biology in an adaptive way.
So in the bushes says exactly, time, space, and matter are human constructs. I would argue,
for sure,
that that's not the case, that time, space, and matter are not human constructs. Rather, what happens is humans construct things with time, space, and matter. Because the person that comes back in 10 years to see your house still standing, they are not building your house with their mental state. They're not physically going to build your house. The house has been constructed out of matter. That's why they can come back and see it still standing. They don't have to construct it and put it together. Even if they didn't know what the structure was, there are structures that we find that have been built by populations that have been long gone. Stonehenge, right? We find these structures, and it's not that they weren't there until we discovered them. They were standing the entire time because someone constructed them out of matter. We didn't construct matter. That's where I think one of the ways that we would disagree. I think it's a backwards way to look at it for me to say we construct matter with our minds.
So you think that matter constructs awareness? Because
that may be a way to look at it. But once again, this was the point I was going to get to, and this might have to be the last point because I got to get ready to dip.
Okay, yeah.
But
yeah.
I was going to say there's some things about what you're saying that are attractive to me. Then there's other things that are not. But
there are certain things about what I think that are unattractive to myself. I got some things to work out. And this is one of the reasons I love throwing ideas off you. So I appreciate.
Here's what I would love for you to think about and get back to me on, if you don't have an answer right now. I wonder if what you're calling awareness is what I would be more comfortable calling reaction. I think that there is something fundamental about nature, about reality, that is reactions. But I cannot get to those reactions without matter. You, however, have awareness, and Even when we talked about the word exist, that was a conversation we had offline.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that was baked into it something reacting to something else that produces this sense of awareness. I don't know how you get awareness that doesn't spring from something. But for me, if you were talking about reactions and that's the way, and you use the terminology of awareness, I might be able to get there.
Do your thoughts spring from awareness? Do your dreams have awareness as a fundamental? Like, I mean, without awareness, you couldn't dream, right? That's fair.
Remember, I read to you that note that I had taken down. I talked about when you're sleeping, you're not aware that you're not conscious. When you're dreaming, you're not aware that you're conscious. When you're awake, you're aware that you're conscious. That's the way that I look at all of that.
Right, but a being who is not aware is not dreaming. Because when you're having a dream, you're aware of what's in the dream. You're not aware maybe of what's happening in your room because you're asleep, but you're aware of what's happening in your dream. That's the reason you can wake up and tell people about it sometimes, right? So you have to be aware in order to have a dream. Is that fair?
I think you have to be conscious. That's why I said when you dream, so you're not aware that you're conscious.
Okay, so let's just use, I use those terms synonymously. You have to be conscious.
Yeah.
You have to be conscious in order to dream. Fair?
Sure.
Okay. You have to be conscious in order to see any of the colors in your room. Fair?
Yes.
You have to be conscious in order to have any of the thoughts in your brain, right? In order to have a thought, you can't have a thought without being conscious, right? Like this, this pen can't have a thought, right? Yes. So in order to have a dream, in order to have a thought, in order to engage with any of the colors or textures or tastes or anything, all of the concepts in your mind are just a reflection of your own limitations, right? All of anything you think, smell, taste, touch, right? And yet you have the audacity, sir. I'm kidding. Yeah. So to me, it's like, dude, I can't say anything but. It's like, I feel like it is the ultimate skeptic position. Even though I'm a theist, I consider myself a skeptic. It's a weird thing because it was like, what the skeptic is going to say is, what can't I deny? What's the one thing I can't doubt? And I'm like, okay, awareness. All right. Now, what springs from awareness? Well, the scientific consensus is pretty much all of it. I mean, like the colors, certainly, smells, tastes, textures, all of that. My thoughts, my concepts, all of that has awareness as, that's all in here, right? And so I don't understand where anyone gets off saying that matter is outside of awareness, because if matter is outside of awareness, there is no evidence for that, even in principle. It's like impossible, even in principle, to come up with a shred of evidence for anything outside of awareness, because awareness is the prerequisite for experiment. Awareness is the prerequisite for going out and discovering anything. And so, and it does so much, for morality, for love, for seeing your fellow man as a periodic, so there's this illusion that you're over there doing that, and I'm over here doing this. But love is the felt recognition of our shared being, that even though we're going through this illusion, we're going to help each other through it, because fundamentally we're the same thing. This is a temporary, we're this temporary excitation, but we're going to collapse back into that oneness. And good behavior, morally good behavior, is behavior which treats one another as if we're one, and because we are one. It's on a fundamental
level. I'm not
level,
mad at the myth that you tell. I'm not mad at the myth that you tell. I want to hang my hat on what we can actually know, or what we can actually surmise. And I see how you get to where you're getting, but some of the places I just can't get to. Let me just say this real quick for anybody who's Ichapod. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m., I'll be back on with Timotheus Pope. We're going to do a part 2 to the discussion we had last week on conversations with Christians. So that'll be tomorrow. Anything you want to shout out to your crew or anybody watching? What's coming up for you?
No, I think my whole crew knows what's up. I mean, we're all waiting on July 31st. We're big Ren fans over here. He's dropping some great music. We're going to be moving into 1984 by George Orwell. That is on the 30th. We are going into chapter 1 of 1984 by George Orwell. We're going to be going through the entire book. We already did Animal Farm, so we have a whole book club kicking off. I just wanted to read. Somebody said, "Where is the evidence for a higher being?" And I want to give just one quick thing on that. I'm not going to go into God, but I think any aspirational project requires the belief in a higher being. Like if you want 6-pack abs, you have to be in touch with the version of yourself that has them already, right? You have to be in touch with that higher self, right? And once you realize that closing the distance on your contemporary state and the goal state has no end, I think that's when you kind of realize that there's an ultimate. It's a horizon that you never reach, right? But I won't for right now go into, because that'll open up.
So I don't know.
Discussion.
I don't think I asked you this, but I know we're about to. About to hop off here. I got one more super chat to read too. So when it comes to higher being, you would say that this awareness that dissociated and is now in these trillions of instantions in you and me and this person and that person, is the awareness that is fundamental reality. It is being because it is, but would you say that you wouldn't say that it is a personal being? You wouldn't go there, would you?
By personal, what do you mean?
In the way that you're an individual person and I'm an individual person, you wouldn't say that the awareness that is fundamental reality is a person, a personal being.
Once again, it's like by personal, you mean like, if by personal, you mean like, is an agent? No, I don't believe that God is an agent, because I think that agency frustrates omniscience. This is something I want you to talk to the person coming on your podcast tomorrow too. The person you're into, that Christian tomorrow. See what he says about that, because I've been trying to get how Christians make that make sense, that an omniscient being would have a plan or would have desires or would have an agency. So no, I don't believe that God is an agent. I believe you and I are agents, and we're only agents so long as we are having this imperfect, transient experience. Got you.
Last super chat from Tyler Giorgelli. Hope I'm saying that. Sorry if I messed up the last name. You got 30 people watching now. We love this. Is this somebody from your channel?
Yes, sir. We got 34 right now. Incredible.
Okay. We got 45 over here on Ichapod, so that's what's up.
Legit.
All right. Hey, bro, thanks for hitting me up and for doing this. Thanks for your time and your mind.
For sure. And if you guys want more of this, just let me know. We're definitely branching off in some different things on our channel too. So thanks for being with us.
Much love, y'all. We'll catch y'all on this Ichapod. I'll see y'all tomorrow night for Conversations with Christians.
Peace. Salud.